Welcome to Practical Uses of AI in Education, Scholarship, and Teaching. So the presenters today are myself and Dr. Ben Kwan. Ben's going to introduce himself about halfway through when we change over to his slides. So you're stuck with me for the first half. So first, I'd like to acknowledge that we gather on the lands of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples who have been guardians of the land since time immemorial. I myself first came to the land now known as Kingston in 2015. I came as an uninvited settler, and I have made my life here. I have been fortunate to find that the land has been well taken care of, that the people are happy and healthy, and that I am able to live, learn, and play on these lands. You might think that AI is a little bit of a stretch or a step away from reconciliation or truth, but the fundamental reality is that AI is and can be a perpetuator of systemic inequities, much of the same inequities that we should be looking and reckoning with as we continue to advance efforts in truth and reconciliation. So keep an eye on that throughout this session and for opportunities to advance kindness and justice for all. So this program has not received any in-kind support from any organizations external to Queen's University. Both Ben and I are faculty here at Queen's. In terms of our learning objectives, so we're going to apply ethical frameworks to AI use in health professions, education, and scholarship, and we're going to stoke thoughtful use of AI that advances skill development. We'll also be discussing some applications and how you can consider these in your scholarship and teaching. So the agenda for the day. So we are in the midst of the welcome and introductions. We'll move on next to the ethics of AI. I'll talk briefly about the concepts of skill atrophy and de-skilling as they line up with AI, and then we'll pass it on over to Ben for what you all came for AI applications. So here's what we happen to look like. I am the Director of Lifelong Learning and Innovation in the Office of Professional Development and Education Scholarship and the Provost Special Advisor on Generative AI for the university. Ben is a professor is an associate professor in radiology, as well as, I believe, the CBME lead, among other things. He also talked me into getting a Max Scherzer Jays jersey, which may not have been the greatest decision of my life, but you know what? Maybe it will be a Hall of Fame collectible one day. So maybe that'll all work out. If we are to be discussing ethical considerations, I think we should discuss them warts and all. So we're going to be talking about how to use AI to magnify the good and minimize the bad. I borrowed this upcoming slide from my good friend, Dr. Kelly Packlin of the School of Business here at Queen's. So before AI kind of brought things into focus, we may have had a little bit of separation between the conversations around AI tools, academic integrity, assurance of learning, and assessment design. But much like AI has magnified problems that may have already been there, it also has brought some alignment into focus. For example, Gen AI tools are an existential threat to academic integrity as we know it, but it's also forced redesigns in assessment, and also it's forced redesigns in how we assure that learning has in fact occurred. So a couple of perspectives on AI and a few archetypes that I have noticed from folks. Now, again, I do enjoy my vivid characters, so I've gone and selected some vivid characters to give some personality to what some of the beliefs that folks might have. So if we were to say the two extremes of people's perspectives around AI, we've got ourselves Jack Nicholson from The Shining in terms of AI is coming in no matter what. Might as well be yelling, "Here's Johnny." And the other side of this one might be that I'm going to glare and stare at every AI innovation that has ever occurred and hold it to account. I hate them all. I would kill them with fire if I could. You've got these different perspectives of what AI and its impact in the academic space, among other ones. There is also a bit of a middle ground between them as well. So if we're going to be discussing these, you might find yourself feeling a little like Jack, a little like Sam, and perhaps maybe, just maybe, somewhere in the middle, like my good friend Joni Mitchell, in case that you don't know where you stand quite yet. So think about where you are with different AI innovations and where they fit in, and understand that this will change with time and that people will have perspectives different than yours. Ethics are very, very contextual. So if we are going to be looking at some frameworks for AI use, you can't really beat UNESCO's AI ethics framework. It's a good one. There's a QR code for it for those that have it. The slides will also be available to all the folks who registered. The UNESCO AI framework I find is the one that we're going to be discussing quite a bit. One that you may not have heard of so far, and this is from my friend, Dr. Janet Corral, and some colleagues. They call this the CARE AI framework, which is framed as a series of questions that you can explore for determining if AI use is in fact ethical. There's an awful lot of different work in this space, scholastically speaking. Now, let's focus on UNESCO for a moment. If we are to be looking at what the 4 core values are in the UNESCO framework, and then we're going to see what they look like in the Queen's AI framework. So UNESCO prioritizes human rights and human dignity. In this case, respect, protection, promotion of human rights, fundamental freedoms, human dignity, that kind of thing. So if we're to be considering how AI is impacting humanity as a whole, we should be considering these 4 things: human rights and human dignity, living in peaceful, just, and interconnected communities. In this case, this one is the tenet that covers the idea about data sovereignty. Number 3 is ensuring diversity and inclusiveness, the idea that AI is going to be a perpetuator of the digital divide. There will not be equal access to AI. That's not a thing that we are in a position to be able to do globally. At Queen's, however, we do have opportunities, like, for example, the provision of enterprise AI tools that are available to every person who is a member of our campus. That's LibreChat and that's Copilot. Every single faculty, staff, librarian, archivist, and learner has access to LibreChat and to Copilot. We've provided this tool as a way of democratizing access to AI. Can't do that everywhere, and it hasn't happened everywhere, and that's something we should be mindful of going forward in the future. Are people who are going to have access to AI going to have the potential for advantages? Sure, I imagine that they would. How do we meet that moment? I think it's going to be the provision of tools so that anybody who wishes to access AI can. Now, are there drawbacks to this? Absolutely there are. That's tenet number 4. If we're to be looking at AI's core values in terms of ethics, one of them that we have to reckon with is that AI, artificial intelligence, and our advanced computing age as a whole does use a lot of energy, does produce a fair bit of carbon, and displaces an awful lot of water. That's to be considered. Let's keep that in context. Our information age and the computers that we use as a whole do rely on the movement of data, and that data requires being stored and siloed and moved in servers and sent across the globe. So pretty much our information age as a whole does have an environmental impact in terms of the displacement of water, the production of carbon in the powering of electricity, and of course, the space that we allocate towards servers and so on and so forth. We should be mindful that the wonders of asking AI for 10 productive and effective ideas for annoying your wife, which I have never done more than twice a week since it's happened, does have a cost for it. If anybody's wondering, the top hit that I keep getting over and over again is getting lyrics to her favorite song wrong, deliberately. Or, for example, unexpected DJ, which is you suddenly change the volume of whatever music she's listening to without saying anything. That may not have been the single greatest noble use of AI that we should be considering. What are Queen's values on AI? What is the, how are we going to decide what counts as good use and what does not? Well, the answer is I don't think any one person can do this. It's going to come down to conversations and groups of people who are meeting and participating in the conversations around AI. So first, I want to say thanks to everybody for participating in that AI needs assessment. I noticed that my home in health sciences is the faculty that participated the most per capita, so I am grateful. Thank you. We all stopped seeing patients for about 15 minutes straight and answered that survey. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all. I see you. If we were to theme these into categories, the first is going to be human-centric AI use. And what are the questions that we ask? Actually, one of the members of our AI subcommittees has joined us. Welcome, Professor Galicia. Thank you. if we're looking at the themes and categories, broad themes, questions to ask yourself about them. There's nothing more scholastic than asking yourself questions. So ask yourself whether the use of AI in X context is going to increase productivity in a meaningful way. Ask whether it's going to create content or opportunities that strengthen human outcomes. Put the person at the center. That is how you center AI use and you prevent it from becoming a tool that displaces people. You should also be considering how it handles repetitive or tedious tasks so that folks can focus on other priorities. I want to harp on this one for a second. AI done right should free a person to do higher value tasks at their discretion. It should handle tedium and repetitiveness. The moment that it displaces a human from making human connection, I think we've done something wrong. Another value, the idea about safeguarding data. You should ask yourself whether AI, that the use of AI prospectively involves processing information classified as confidential or internal under Queen's data classification standard. Now, this one's a little tricky to wrap your head around, so I'm going to help. Internal data. Data that is in fact the property of Queen's. If you are staff at Queen's, chances are you should assume until you have reason to believe otherwise, the data that you're using is something within the Queen's ecosystem, and you should keep it within the Queen's ecosystem, which means use one of Queen's enterprise AI tools, LibreChat or Copilot. Confidential information is something about a person or proprietary about Queen's. There's a difference and there's space between those two. Somebody's health data, somebody's personal email, somebody's phone number, that's confidential. That a person is in fact at Queen's, that a person is in this class, that's internal. See the difference between the two? Confidential is obviously more sensitive data. Both of those are safe to work with within both of Queen's enterprise tools. I would not be putting that into garden variety, Claude, ChatGPT, or any of the other AI tools that are there. If a tool is provided to you for free and it's not one of Queen's enterprise tools, chances are you are the product. Your information is the commodity that is being bought. Please don't buy these folks any more yachts. Focus, if you're using on internal or confidential data, use any of the two AI tools that are provided to you by Queen's, Copilot and LibreChat. So in terms of accuracy and fairness, this is where AI kind of goes off the rails. There is the possibility that an AI will confidently tell you something that is completely untrue. We know this. That's not new. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we going to be actually doing anything about it? What counts as mitigating this bias? As it turns out, Queen's Library has put together a very helpful guide that I can include along with my slides when I send that on out. The Queen's Library has put one about mitigating bias in AI use. Specifically, it's designed for research, but it works for just about every other circumstance. So lastly, we can be, or sorry, not lastly, but we should also be considering openness, transparency. I know it can be scary to say, I used AI in this resource, and that you feel that like you've stepped into a confessional and you're talking about something naughty that you happen to have done. There is nothing braver than being honest about how you used AI, because if you used AI well, it strengthens your methodology. It makes your work more trustworthy if I see a person who's disclosed it, because there is not a paper that I've reviewed for any journal of which I'm a reviewer since ChatGPT exploded onto the scene, truthfully, that hasn't used AI meaningfully in some way, shape, or form. If you use spell check, if you used Grammarly, if you used any number of other softwares, any internet browser accelerator, any advertisement or Google Scholar, you have accessed an AI whether you know it or admit it. It's been there. So the people that include a statement that said AI was used in this way, this version, transparent, clean, and open, that's meeting the moment, I think, rather bravely. You should also ask whether the outcomes or decisions that the AI tool you are using is going to have impacts for community members. In particular, AI tools are a threat to Indigenous data sovereignty. The reason being is because So much of it is in a written oral tradition that an AI will use, impersonate, and infuse into content. It's a unique vulnerability that we have to ask if it is in fact meeting the moment. We should also consider, who do we have to disclose to that we used an AI tool? So in my case, who is the disclosure for on a paper? If we're publishing a paper and we're submitting it, of which Richard and I have done so on AI of all topics, when we did that and we had to write down our AI disclosure statement, who is that statement for? Not rhetorical. Who is that statement for? Is it us stepping into a confessional? Sure, maybe. Who else? Who else benefits from that statement being there? The readers. Very good. Who else? Sorry? The publisher. Reviewers, the publisher, and all that. Saying that AI was used in this paper and openly stating that is transparency for the reader to understand that, yes, an AI was used for this, this, and this reason. In our case, it's for the fact that I am confident I don't always know how to use a semicolon. And Richard can't fix all of them for me. It's also for the reviewer and the publisher to know that an AI was used in this particular way for this reason. We used it for editing sentences, suggesting word removals to help us meet our word count, and for ideas of articles to include. Now, ideas for articles to include, whose responsibility is it if one of those articles included, say, happens to not exist? Like, for example, the fact that when I did a deep research and it suggested that Richard was quite the prolific scholar in AI research. Congratulations, by the way. Those 20 papers that it suggested that you wrote, I looked at and thought, oh, those are fantastic. We should write them because they don't exist, but it suggested it. We didn't include those, don't worry. Who is accountable? If you deploy an AI use and harm, in the broadest sense of the word, is actually used and harm is actually created, who is responsible? Do I get to blame the AI tool, or do I have to take a degree of personal responsibility as the person who actually used it? It's the person who uses the said AI tool who will bear the most proximal responsibility for it. Long term, I'm sure we'll find a way to blame AI companies as well. But in the meantime, it's the person who happens to use it as well that we should be thinking of. Now, a little bit more scholarly, let's differentiate between the terms skill atrophy, so AI-induced skill atrophy, and de-skilling. Have folks heard this term before? The atrophy you probably have. De-skilling, I've been hearing more about. This is one that I want to pick up on. So if we were to define AI-induced skill atrophy in the way that Kabashkin has, which I think is the best article on the topic so far, AI skill-induced atrophy is caused by the overuse of AI for routine work that over time weakens your ability to do something. As proven by my father, you can in fact forget how to ride a bike. You can actually lose that ability over time if you do not in fact use it. My father started cycling again after 30 years. And it was entertaining. We didn't quite have to put training wheels back on the bike, but we definitely were thinking about it. Overuse of AI for routine work weakens skills over time. It happens slowly and then quickly. The skill exists, but performance and outcomes of that skill has degraded over time. So if you're thinking about it, the early warning signs are that people start avoiding doing tasks avoid doing tasks manually, even when it is appropriate. So I will think about, and I'll give a vivid example for this. Reference letters. People may have forgotten how to start writing a reference letter, and staring at that blank page feels like a curse. The reason being is because AI can render a fairly good reference letter. It renders it so well, you may in fact forget how to write one over time that doesn't sound like the soft serve garbage that an AI produces and says, for example, about a fictitious resident named Jordan, that I got to write a reference letter that 13 of the 14 Obgyn program directors at ICRE said would have gotten the person into their program. That was ICRE 3 years ago. Declining speed or quality when AI is removed or unavailable. You will literally see mild symptoms of withdrawal when you're seeing this particular behavior on people. That's what it looks like. The third one I think might be the most dangerous. Overtrust of AI outputs with limited verification. That is dangerous. So in practice, you can see people and clinicians relying on AI summaries and losing fluency in their chart synthesis or their clinical reasoning. You can also see educators starting to lose their ability, if they overuse AI, to draft feedback or provide multiple choice questions. Overusing AI, to put it how I think my dad would, that crap rots your brain if you use it too often. My father's ever the scientist. You can also see people having reduced confidence. So what should we actually do about this? First, design workflows that keeps humans meaningfully in the loop. If a human does not examine the product of an AI output doesn't examine that before it is deployed, I think you've made a misstep. Ultimately, it's a person who is responsible. Ultimately, a person should be the final reviewer of it all and takes responsibility for it. I would also say that every now and then, even though an AI could absolutely write that letter of reference for you, maybe write one yourself just to keep your skills sharp. Just one. Do that. Prove to yourself that you can still do it as well as you did before. And if that happens to not be true, maybe, just maybe, you should be thinking about drafting them a little more often. Don't outsource yourself to an AI, is the best advice that I think I can give you. So if you treat AI as augmentation, not substitution, I think if you're treating it as augmentation, not substitution, that's good. If you are treating it as, oh, look, I can outsource myself to this AI, somebody else is going to have that idea as well. And that strikes me as being bad. I will give you an example. My friends in ITS have built an AI advisor bot that fundamentally gives much of the same advice that I would. It has read everything that I have written on the subject of AI, and the damn thing even sounds like me. It writes like me, it sounds like me. And anybody can add this to their Teams chat and they can ask the AI advisor bot for advice about AI. It was built in Copilot Studio. Now I asked this thing, and I'll actually point out that it might have one advantage over me. Comparatively, in that if you ask it to break the rules, it just won't respond to you, which I think is an advantage to me, because in my case, I have a reaction of horror or something like that, or maybe I'll think you're joking or something. This thing just won't talk to you. Like, for example, I, of course, asked it the standard question of, how can I asked, if I remember verbatim, I asked it, what would be the most efficient way for me to use Queen's property for my own personal benefit, was the question that I asked it. Just wouldn't answer. In my case, I'd think about it and go like, I shouldn't answer that. The AI bot got there first. Let's differentiate skill atrophy, which is the slow loss of skills, to AI de-skilling. AI-induced de-skilling is the permanent loss of a skill. We have lost the ability to do this, largely speaking. I will point out, speaking in Latin, home row typing, whole bunch of other things that parts of a society have, parts of a society no longer have. Dialing on a rotary phone. That was entertaining. I remember that my mom told my cousins that they could have whatever pizza they wanted if they were able to dial the number on a rotary phone, which I remember watching with quite a bit of entertainment. What does de-skilling look like in practice? So a clinical pathway where an AI makes most of the triage and reasoning decisions. That sounds bad. If it makes most of them without a clinician reviewing them, that sounds bad to me. Administrative rules reduced to exception handling. If it's only administrative rules that are only navigating the exceptions, and with limited end-to-end process understanding, that sounds like a vulnerability. So now what? Deskilling. What do we do? If we're imagining that it's a long-term erosion of professional capability and workforce resilience, that would naturally mean that there would be quite a bit less innovation available. There would also be greater dependence on vendors and the possibility of getting locked in with any one vendor. See how it introduces vulnerability? If you lose the ability to do something, you naturally become more vulnerable and more beholden to those that still have that ability. The key here is push back against this loss of capacity. As an institution, with our programs, with our training, this is something that we should look at to say, are we ceding ground to tools that we do not fully understand how they work? So comparing and contrasting them for folks to be able to see them. If you imagine that the primary mechanism of skill atrophy is that skills weaken over time, for de-skilling, it's that skills disappear because work is structurally redesigned. Society will change over time if we give ground to AI tools and we don't retain the ability to do what we delegate to the AI frequently. You can also take a look at the speed of impact as well as the reversibility. Skill atrophy you can reverse at any time by picking up the skill once again and practicing. De-skilling means that that skill is fundamentally rarer. It's significantly harder to reverse over time. The warning signs for this in de-skilling, this one I think is important. Job roles become narrower. Maybe somewhat folks might be able to get behind people specializing. Specialists will probably get behind people specializing. I can understand that. But if job roles become narrower, you lose track of the full picture, you lose track of the full function of the role, and your training is focused only on, say, tool or procedural operation. Your world has become smaller because you've allowed something to eat up parts of your responsibility. Bottom line, the mitigation levers are practice design for skill atrophy to make sure that you do one every now and then to make sure that your skills stay sharp. And then for de-skilling, the counter is specific governance and procurement standards that preclude AI from fully removing a skill from a given population. So I'll stop there and I'll pass it over to Ben. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. So my name is Benjamin Kwan. I am a neuroradiologist and the assistant program director for the diagnostic radiology residency program at the postgraduate medical education office. I'm the educational innovations lead, and I'm also the faculty research director for radiology. So switching gears, I'm going to share 3 examples of how we can use AI in medical education. And these aren't hypothetical or future tools. These are tools that we've worked on and implemented. So when we consider applying AI in an educational context, I like to ask 2 simple questions. Kind of like Terry was alluding to, is there a task that is burdensome or repetitive, but well-defined? And can AI make something that's impractical practical? So I want to share the first example here. This is some work that I've been doing with Dr. Boris Seven. And when we set the stage for this, narrative feedback, we know, is one of the most powerful tools we have to help residents grow. And it provides insight, context, and promotes reflective practice. But we know that the narrative feedback itself varies tremendously in quality. And this is not something that we regularly assess. So to tackle this, there are various frameworks that have been validated for assessing the quality of narrative feedback. And a popular one is from Chan et al. Called the QAL score. And this is measured on 3 dimensions. The first one is evidence. Does the rater provide sufficient evidence about resident performance? And that's rated on a scale of 0 to 3. It has a second dimension of suggestion. Does the rater provide a suggestion for improvement in the feedback? And the connection. Does the rater suggest that there is a link to the behavior described? And these seem simple, but to manually score thousands of comments is not feasible. So there's our challenge. Narrative feedback is critical, but evaluating it at the quality of the feedback at scale is impractical. And this is exactly the kind of pattern recognition task that AI can be applied to. So the AI tool. Here we leverage large language models to evaluate the quality of narrative feedback on resident performance. And we experimented with several approaches, including baseline prompts to refine prompts, task decomposition, chain of thought prompting, and fine tuning. And this slide tells you kind of the different approaches that we used. It's hard to read, but basically when we take a large language model, we can go through several iterations to make it more accurate for the task at hand. And this is a summary slide showing that at the end of the day, we were able to get a very comparable, a very good result from the F1 score using the fine-tuning method for this. But what does this mean? Well, we can now assess feedback quality at scale. That's something we couldn't do before. We can use this as a faculty development tool, giving educators ongoing feedback about the comments they write. And we can make the impractical practical by reducing the time and labor spent on repetitive classification tasks. And just looking at, for instance, a cost savings, we can see that running this model would cost approximately $76 US for the API calls and the fine tuning. But to actually get that pre-labeled set, it cost around $3,700 for 2 people to label that set. Now let's look at another example. So diagnostic radiology residents learn by drafting initial reports of interpretations of, for example, CT or MRI scans. And these are revised with faculty. But the educational value in these changes is rarely documented. Draft reports represent a resident's opinion, while the final reports represent the expert opinion. And the difference between them are rich sources of feedback that are often not captured. So these differences are not systemically captured, but if we could analyze them reliably and automatically, we'd unlock powerful new performance metrics. So what's the AI tool? Well, we applied LLMs to compare draft and finalized reports across several dimensions, including similarity of the reports, clarity, confidence, terminology. And here is a summary slide of the prompt focus areas. So what were the results? What we noted was that key improvements noted in the final reports included increased definitive language use, elimination of unnecessary details, and improved detail in anatomic descriptions. The measurements, feature measurements were added or revised as well. However, we also found out what is unchanged. Residents have consistent diagnostic conclusions. They consistently use the correct terminology. They use a clear organizational structure in the reports and have a professional tone. And this actually aligns well with the literature where residents master diagnostic accuracy early, but the confidence and the communication aspects develop later. So I want to share last example here of another problem we have in competency-based medical education, or a challenge. We know that competency committees are inundated with narrative comments, but they need to identify the actionable feedback quickly. But finding that comment is often like finding, of course, a needle in a haystack. So the aim of this AI tool was to use sentiment analysis for sorting out hundreds of narrative comments for competency committees to streamline the review process. We saw that when the CC members saw deficits in the EPA entrustments, they want to find the comments to back that up or provide the context for that underperformance. And what happens at the CC meetings is that you scan through hundreds of these comments, and it's very hard to find them quickly. So what we did here was that we used a fine-tuned Roberta model to classify these comments into negative, neutral, and positive. And by providing reports to the CC members in these in specific PDF reports of positive, negative, and neutral comments, they were able to quickly find the actionable comments to support promotion decisions. And just kind of looking at one example is that, these CC members are potentially looking at 450 comments for 9 residents in, for instance, a meeting for radiology. So in the end, AI works best for structured classification, finding use cases that have pattern recognition at scale. But as Terry was alluding to, very important to still have the professor in the loop and the human in the loop for the interpretation of the AI output and educational judgment. So AI is best suited for burdensome, repetitive, well-defined tasks and making impractical educational processes scalable. So at this point, I think we'll open up the floor to questions.
Mike's facing my way, people will see it. I'll just talk to Ben's lapel. It will work out fine. Gina, please. We're going to throw things at each other, okay?
I'm not sure I have a question per se, but just comments. The concept of task degradation or losing your skills, we can all understand that. My worry from the educational sense is if you've never developed those skills in the first place, how do you know where you are in that space? And you can't recognize when AI is giving you something that's crap if you never learned it in the first place.
Precisely.
So I have that generalized angst, and I'm not sure where I am in the picture, probably somewhere in the middle and a little bit distressed, but that's one concept that I was hoping to toss to you to explore. But this is also something that's been happening for a very long time prior to AI, just with all of our technology, talking about clinical education. Our clinical skills of our learners are nowhere near where they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago, because of all of our technology, right? I have a recollection in a past life. I was working in Ethiopia like 15 years ago, and the residents' clinical exam compared to the ones in Toronto were vastly different because they didn't have easy access to radiology, echoes, all of that sort of stuff. That was 15 years ago, and the difference was absolutely stark. I can't even imagine what it would be now, right? And so again, this has been happening to our world in many different ways prior to, I guess, whatever, if that's not artificial intelligence when I'm talking about an echo, but it has been, our world has been de-skilling, as you said, in many other ways. The issue I always have is, well, what skills do we need to acquire first before we lose them? And I'm not sure we know the answer to that, and I'm sure it's a moving target, but I just wanted to toss that out to the group.
I wouldn't mind commenting on that first. So, de-skilling certainly as a concept, this isn't our first rodeo. We've seen this before. There is a narrow difference between de-skilling and skill denial. There's a difference between the two in terms of denial of acquiring a given skill because you've never done it yourself. Absolutely between the two. De-skilling is something that falls out of use and is structurally displaced. Denial of skill acquisition is I've always delegated something to an AI, so I never learned how to do it. You're right. This is not unique to AI. The difference is AI has certainly accelerated it and made it on a grander scale before, much in the same way that COVID revealed a lot of problems that were already there and brought them into pretty sharp focus. AI is doing that again, and it's doing it again very sharply and closely after its heels, which is why for those of us that have been alive the last 10 years, we've been thinking, can I please just get a boring year? Just one dull, boring year would be very, very nice. I don't believe that happens to be in the cards. In terms of the skills that we have lost, some of them, and this is something that people are welcome to disagree with, some of them could go with very little loss. I am okay with the fact that I hunt and peck. That is okay. I hunt and peck when I am typing. It works out fairly well. I have decent speed. My mother, who actually taught typing classes to me and others, is horrified, obviously. My father-in-law is probably to some extent upset that the world no longer learns Latin, but we have soldiered on with other things and other tools and skills that have filled said learning void. Some things that we are at risk of losing are more hazardous, I think, to our values. Those are the things that I am worried about becoming de-skilled, that I'm worried about people losing the ability or that never learn how to do something. If you never learn how to interpret, and I'm going to do a radiology example next to a radiologist, which I always think is dangerous. If you don't learn how to interpret something, because an AI always gives you the interpretation, that's bad. What if it does it wrong? You have no ability to challenge or say, I don't think this is right. This is the danger that we are seeing in people using AI outputs as frequently as they are, because they never learned that that is not a convincing argument. That's not how an argument actually gets formed. Or if you don't know enough, you can say, yes, for sure, Richard wrote those 20 articles about AI. He is the vice dean. Health Sciences Education. He must have written them. I know enough to know that Richard didn't write those articles. I can tell that. There is a hazard to not being able to tell when an AI has produced something that is false, misleading, or biased. That's the danger. If you never learned how to do it, you never learn how to catch it and correct it.
So a lot of what I was going to say, you've actually already said. I was going to just sort of add on the comment of like trying to determine if like, is it a skill we need? So there's lots of things like we've lost in like, you know, home row typing. Does that matter? Like really, who cares in the end? Some people will for sure. But even something like a reference letter, does it really matter if we know how to write it properly? Like the intention isn't for the person who's writing it to do a good job. The intention is to give a reference for somebody, right? So I think we just have to do a good job of sort of determining like the things that matter. We either have to make sure we learn or we keep as skills, but there's probably going to be a lot that maybe doesn't matter.
I think Richard's is pretty directly connected, and then we'll go online.
I mean, I understand, Terry, your argument around humans being a check against an imperfect technology, but as that technology gets better, it'll be better than the humans. So that argument will slowly fade. You know, the ability for humans to say, oh yeah, that's right. Well, maybe we're actually not as good at detecting the wrong as the technology is. And so I think that's what Gina was saying, right? Like technology advances, it gets better, it replaces human activity. I mean, I was thinking I hire a big shovel to dig a big hole, and I don't plan to go out with a shovel and dig a big hole with it manually. And I don't care if I know how, I just hire a big shovel to do it because that's the most efficient and best way to do it. And so, you know, I think that's the thing we have to figure out is what is the nature of human involvement and why is it important in certain tasks, not whether we can do it better or not than the technology.
The current AI models that exist, and I say these the current ones, you have to use that adjective for it, have a hard cap in their potential for the time being based on how they've been trained. Future technologies might be able to make breakthroughs to be able to surpass human capacity and ability. For the moment, because an AI tool has to use human training data, its hard cap is the peak of human performance, which might be better than any one individual's perhaps ability, but there is a cap on its capacity with how AI tools currently are trained in the transformer technology as a whole. New generations of AI tools might make me swallow my words, but the idea that an AI tool is going to suddenly become better than a human being anytime immediately is a stretch.
Just to highlight, we have, oh, do you want to go over there first and then go online, Terry? We'll go online. There's a paper shared online that was by Adam Suski, so thank you. Educational strategies for clinical supervision of artificial intelligence use. So we can share that to everybody who's not online. But Adam has his hand up, and then Alan. So we'll go Adam first. If you want to unmute.
Yeah, thanks very much, and I appreciate the great conversation. Thanks, Terry and Ben. I just wanted to follow up on Gina's comment, just in terms of language that we can use with respect to some of the downsides of AI when it comes to teaching clinical reasoning and that sort of thing. This paper that I just shares some of that language and a bit of a theoretical model around that. I just wanted to give kind of three terms that I think Terry and Ben you were alluding to, but they're I guess similar but slightly different. So they talk about de-skilling, which is the loss of previously acquired skills, never skilling, which is the failure to develop essential competencies, and mis-skilling, which is the reinforcement of incorrect behavior due to AI error and bias. I just thought that was a nice way to start thinking about some of the pitfalls of AI use, and I think it's a great paper if people want to have a look. So thanks again for a great talk.
Yeah, Alan, go ahead if you'd like to unmute.
Thanks so much. It was a really interesting talk. Just one comment followed up by question. There's a lot of people that are taking the attitude that, AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So we might as well embrace it, because if we're afraid of it or we focus too much on the negative aspects of it, we're actually going to do our learners a disservice because they're going to use it anyway. The example I'll give is, you look at something like UpToDate. I mean, whether you call that AI or not, I don't know. But like when I started training, nobody had phones or tools to look up answers really quickly. Like you were expected to know everything on the spot. And there's been a lot of evidence to show that with the amount of information that medicine produces these days, it would almost be impossible for us to know the amount that we thought our supervisors knew 20 years ago. So we've sort of embraced these tools on the wards and in our offices that have allowed us to look up information that's hopefully reliable and evidence-based to serve patients. And it also sort of opens up time to see more patients, which seems to be what the government wants us to do. Another example for my office is I'm using an AI scribe right now, and I don't care what anyone says about the dangers of that. It's saving me an hour of time a day, and I'm going to keep using it no matter what anybody says. So the question I have, I guess, for the speaker or the speakers is, how quickly do you think research on using AI properly or embracing AI for our learners can be pumped out so that we can actually follow the evidence and follow the tools so that we can sort of guide our learners and colleagues appropriately with, what are the good things about AI versus always focusing on the dangers of it. And then at the end of the day, in the eyes of our learners, we may look like we're sort of out of touch or not keeping up with the technology that we can use.
Thanks, Alan. So your question is about how quickly some of these studies are getting produced. We'll use the example of AI scribes. There are 2025 and early 2026 studies that are being done on the efficacy of scribes and how much time they are saving clinicians. The evidence actually is pretty mixed. It depends on clinician to clinician and the person's given style, whether they actually experience any gain at all, or if they end up having to spend more time correcting the scribe. I will point out that currently still AI scribes take my first name and turn it into a medical condition. So let's not, but for the record, anybody who's curious, it's Eleftherios, which somehow becomes elephantitis. So you might spend a fair deal of time actually correcting a given scribe. For some people and the way that they style to speak, and if you happen to use fairly plain language and how you're speaking to patients, you actually get a fairly robust gain. Those that still have some degree of technicality in their language or that their field has unpronounceable conditions actually will spend quite a bit of time actually doing corrections on this. It's a mix. So there is, if we're looking at that ratio about whether it's neutral, beneficial, or negative, the line is actually all the way from very slightly negative to people experiencing about a 20% gain in efficiency. The most optimistic of studies say about a 20% gain in efficiency is possible. There have been studies that show that there is actually a negligible gain, and there are some that say you're still just as distracted because you're making sure that the AI tool is actually working instead of you actually making all that eye contact you thought you were going to with your patients. Again, depends on the user. The way that you're describing it sounds like it's really helpful to you in your style, for which I am very glad. More research on this and the meta-analyses are still forthcoming. There just aren't enough studies yet. There's only about 7 or 8 that I've seen published between the New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of Continuing Education, the health professions, 1 or 2 in academic medicine, and then 1 in medical teacher. We actually haven't seen medical education's first empirical study on scribe use, but I'm sure it's coming. The same thing is going to be happening with other tools. Like one of the ones that's here at Queen's that Ben might know a fair bit more about is Heartwave, is it? What's it called? The one that actually does the scanning of the yes. I think you might have heard of the, do you know this one? Okay. So there's also one at U of T that I believe is called, I think it's called Brainwave or something like that. And this one actually does every single head image that comes in or is done in and around the ER is automatically screened for a brain bleed for it. That's an extra layer of analysis that wasn't available before. It passively will highlight if there might be an issue. That sounds like an AI tool that would be useful to a lot of kinds of people. The empirical studies of these are still forthcoming. I'd expect more of them in about a year. Enough of them for people to start doing competing meta-analyses anyway.
Yeah, and kind of to add to that from a radiology perspective, at the RSNA, which is the largest radiology conference, about a year ago, there weren't too many tools coming to commercial use, but in the last year, there have been lots and lots of companies that are bringing things to the market. And I think right now, at least for radiology, one of the problems is that there are a lot of specific use cases for the tools that do specific things, such as what Terry was saying. They detect a brain bleed, but then you need another program to detect a stroke, and then you need another program to detect a tumor. So having a complete enterprise solution will be the next step, but that's not there yet. And we've got a question. Matt?
Yeah. So I'm still stuck on the de-skilling thing. And I don't know where I sit in this spectrum, but I keep thinking about de-skilling versus reskilling. And the humans that have that skill because they're people and they've developed this skill. And if they lose that skill, they'll probably develop something else. And so I'm wondering if we can think about it a little bit like reskilling, where we may not be able to, write the reference letter, but we may be able to spend that time, energy, and effort thinking about something new and innovative, things that AI currently can't do, which is innovate. And that kind of leads to my second point about AI being able to innovate. And I think what you're talking about there is artificial general intelligence. And how far do you think we are away from that?
I'll take those questions, first one first, and then second one, hopefully never, because I'm not sure how to answer that one. The first one is around reference letters. I argued at the time, I think a little naively, I argued that, frankly, I think this makes reference letters obsolete. Can we please never, ever, ever do them again and have people actually focus on other things? To an extent, I actually don't particularly like reference letters because they actually turn out to very rarely be truly from the heart, very rarely accomplishing anything. That's the truth. That happens to be the view that I have. I'm sure reasonable people will disagree with me on this. Passionately being able to advocate for someone in writing is not a skill I want people to lose. My problem is with the bureaucracy of reference letters. My problem is not with people having the ability to passionately advocate for something that they believe in writing. That's the skill that's actually at stake. Reference letters aren't the skill. Advocating for someone in writing is the skill. That's one that I don't want to lose. So if we're talking about what's the right de-skilling there, maybe just maybe we waste less of our time on reference letters, but focus our attention on still what is a good mechanism for advocating for someone that we believe in. A purposeful reskill to me makes more sense than a flat de-skill. Did you want to qualify?
Yeah, I was using reference letters as kind of like a variable, like whatever the skill would be, for example, like software engineer by trade. So the language that I know and love best is PHP, except now I don't have to write that PHP anymore. I can write in whatever language I want to. And right now I'm actually losing my PHP skills and I'm Python.
You're also one of the pioneers in Claude Code at Queen's anyway, in terms of its use. And I think you can speak to how that's affecting your team, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, sure. Happy to. So it's no secret. The application services team has gone from like a large development team down to essentially developers. We still maintain and support a number of applications. And so we were looking in the early fall, we were looking at ways to increase our productivity. Anthropic is an AI company. They make an awesome product called Claude.
Queen's makes no endorsement of any specific AI tool.
Fair, yes. Anyways, Claude, a subset of that is called Claude Code. It's a CLI tool that you run on your computer in the command line. It does something that 3 years ago, I never would have thought I would see in my lifetime, which is it writes the code for you. And it does an absolutely incredible job. And I can't explain that enough. I'd talk about it for hours, but it does a very, very good job. So what we did was introduce a pilot with our application services team, getting them to adopt Claude Code to do their software development. And what we were measuring throughout that 3-month pilot was productivity. How much more code can people write? What is the quality of the code that is outputted? And are these developers happier now that they're no longer software developers, they're engineering managers? So they don't do the code, they do the managing of the AI team. Oh, sorry.
So folks, just for a second, I'll go over to Romero in a second. So Julie and then Romero, but if folks want to take a picture of a slide, this might be the one that they want to take a picture of. Oh, crud. Well, there's no substitute for human intelligence.
Just super fast. Building off what Gina had said about the never skilling, I spend my life around 20-year-olds. I'm raising 14 to 16-year-olds who all lived through COVID. And I'm really into adopting and finding opportunities with AI, but I'm also hugely terrified when I hear my children downstairs asking Google to like spell flexible and various other opportunities. And I worry for and just what we're seeing in the erosion of critical assessment skills and clinical thinking and working through problems and problem solving, like the problem solving piece. I'm really struggling to find the balance of how do we build the skills as humans and how do we connect and keep the connections while still using AI and still being able to like talk to people and do all of those things. So not really much of a question, just more of that's where I'm living in my.
This is something that we're both thinking about as well.
So I'm gonna.
That's me.
See, I need a.
No worries. No, you need the special advisor bot. Don't worry, it's great. Talks back to you way less.
Well, one of the things that I've heard is for software development that the best way to develop software is two people doing it. One person's coding and the other person's sort of standing over them and watching the code being developed. I don't know what your thoughts are, but using AI in that sense, and it's sort of the way you described it, whether that's valuable or not. The other thing is I'd like to challenge you. I kind of think that, yes, without what people would call wonder or curiosity, where you're just trying to get to the bottom line, yeah, I agree with you. But when you have wonder, I disagree with you entirely. I think it often offers other opportunities for people who don't have the chance to come to a university like this to be educated. To get access to information, whether before it was just on YouTube, but now in all sorts of ways where you can go, here, let me try this math question and go, well, what did I do wrong here? I think it's just how you use the tool as much as just as anything else.
Sure. So, Romero, I'm going to summarize your question poorly. In terms of AI has the capacity certainly to democratize information quite a bit. One of the ways that it does so is by creating a certain amount of access for folks that didn't previously have access, which I think is a wonderful thing. The fact that there are people now that don't have access to the privileges of learning that we happen to, but can ask and have conversations with AI and grow rapidly in content areas that they did not have access to before, I think is good for humanity. At the same time, we have to be cognizant that there are costs to the technological marvels that we have access to, costs that we are not doing nearly enough to mitigate and address. The fact that AI is very, very thirsty and uses an awful lot of water. It absolutely does. At the same time, there are places on our planet that don't have enough water. I think we need to be very mindful that there are costs to the technological marvels that we have. Stuff that we need to keep in mind, even at the same time that people are able to ask questions and get answers that they would never have been able to before, stoking perhaps a love of learning and a lifetime of achievement in a given space. Sure can, but only if you agree with me.
Okay, so we have technology here that we use. You probably came to work, or many people came to work. I came to work with an internal combustion engine.
Yep.
If we want to get efficiency, one of the things that AI will do is deliver electricity and make us use it way more efficiently than we can just on our own. So there, I think, like any technology,
yes,
including nuclear energy, which is probably providing the electricity in this room, it can be used for horrible things and it can be used for wonderful things. So I think having an open mind, sure, being cognizant of the terrible things that can happen, but also looking at exploring the ways that it should be used should be equally taken, and perhaps, especially in a learning institution, highlighted as well.
Well, this is the best disagreement ever because I think we fundamentally agree. Yes, absolutely. If we're cognizant of the dangers and work on improving the technology and mitigating its effects, I think it can be an absolute marvel in the way that I think it already is. Folks, it is right on time. So folks, I will happily be delighted to handle any and all questions that folks would have. Take a moment to scan that QR code. That's going to be how you're able to actually access your post-program survey, and please complete the program evaluation. If you have negative feedback, please target it to Ben. If you have any positive feedback, I will happily accept any and all of your praise. Please write that on in. It is what's used for us for the planning of future sessions. My gratitude to the good folks of the EdSchool team and the OPDES faculty development team for making today possible. My gratitude to you both. And Ben, thanks for showing us those cool AI applications. I thought it was so good. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day.
And a big thank you to our presenters, Ben and Terry. Thank you for coming this morning and sharing all of that excellent discussion about AI. You can go forward one more slide. Just to highlight, the next two rounds are March, I believe March 24th and May 26th. So put those in your calendar. And then the other exciting thing we'd like to announce is on Thursday, May 28th, there will be a Queen's Health Sciences Celebration of Education Scholarship, Teaching and Learning from 9 to 3. We hope you can all come, so save the date. And we're also calling for 100-word abstracts from any faculty, staff, or learner who wants to share their ideas. So please take a look. We'll circulate the links to all of this as well following the session, and more information to come. But those abstracts will be due on February 28th. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.